And welcome back to the show. New York State's eviction moratorium ended on January the 15th. The moratorium actually halted the evictions if renters filed paperwork stating that the pandemic affected their ability to actually pay their rent. Now, the COVID-19 hold on evictions across the Empire State came to a close more than 4 months after the state extended the measure in September, following the end of federal protections. Here now to share a little bit more, we are pleased to be joined, I should say, by partner David A. Gallo and Associates, Robert M. Link, who brings us to where we are today. And Robert, Happy New Year. And I'll ask the question right off the bat. A lot of people thought that there would be no end to this moratorium, but in fact, the end is actually here. How does this work if you're actually a landlord who's been looking for this a long time coming?
Well, if you're a landlord, and thanks, Daren, for having me on the show again. For the last year and a half, there has been, for the most part, a moratorium on residential and commercial foreclosures. In the most recent version of the law that was passed in September, they extended the moratorium to January 15th, where the tenant could show that there was a COVID-19 hardship, either a financial hardship or a health and safety hardship. So if the tenant checked a box on a piece of paper and sent it over to the landlord or sent it over to the court, all eviction proceedings, any notices, any movement towards an eviction, either a non-payment eviction or a holdover, which means there's no longer a lease, that eviction process couldn't move forward. Now, the landlords are happy to know that starting on January 16th, starting this week when this interview airs, the landlords can proceed with the eviction process. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be, totally opening up the floodgates. I think you're going to start to see a trickling of cases come in. Remember, if you're a tenant and you want to be represented by counsel, there'll be resources at the court for you to consult with, to request emergency funds, to meet with counsel and make sure your defenses are articulated. You'll also be able to request adjournments if you're not feeling well or had a COVID interaction, or even on your first appearance, you're typically able to request an adjournment of the proceedings so you could find an attorney or request another date. They have to grant that to you no matter what. So things are going to move slow at the outset, but you'll start to see things pick up during the year.
One of the things that we talked about with this particular end to eviction is the fact of what the moratorium does. I should say the moratorium coming to an end. One of the things that occurs is the right to a free attorney. Break that down for us, and actually, what are some of the actual steps that a person can take now that they have no opportunity to have a free attorney through this process?
Okay, so when you go to the courthouse, there's various resources available. In fact, if you go to newyorkcourts.gov, there's a lot of resources for tenants who are looking for an attorney, who want information about the eviction process, who want to understand their rights and their defenses. So I would encourage everybody to go to newyorkcourts.gov as a first step. But when you're in the courthouse, you can typically tell the court attorney or the judge that you want to speak with counsel, and they'll arrange an opportunity for you to meet with a free housing counselor or an attorney, and they will evaluate you, usually in accordance with your income threshold, about whether or not you qualify for free legal services. Sometimes you can qualify if you have some sort of health issue, or if you're over a certain age, you can also qualify for free legal services. If you don't qualify for free legal services, minimally you can get some advice or maybe some help applying for the emergency assistance funds that were made available over the summer. It's important that even if, and for most accounts, the emergency assistance fund funds were depleted, particularly for residents within New York City. But you want to get that application in my view, no matter what the case is, because just the fact that you have an application pending is going to be guidance for the judge to delay the case, to give you time to see if something can be worked out. You can also apply for what's called a one-shot deal from funds from the city of New York, which is basically a loan, a low-interest loan for you to repay your landlord past due arrears, and you can apply for that one time. So you want to meet with an attorney. You want to review your resources with the court. And if you don't qualify for a free attorney, maybe go to the Bar Association, see if something can be obtained in your price range.
One of the things that people are really concerned about during this time is the fact that you're going to see more and more people now go to court and the need for evictions. Evictions are going to take place. But you've got people who are saying, proponents who say, listen, when it comes to the issue of homelessness, we already have an emerging crisis as it is. After these evictions and after people start getting in the courtroom, there is a possibility that we can see a tremendous uptick of New York City homeless.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. Again, I think it's going to take a long time for these evictions to ramp up. The court has discretion to delay the proceedings about a year, from once they actually get started. So if there is a pending application for ERAP funds, if the tenant is making arrangements, if you can show proof that, I'm looking for apartments, or, I'm trying to arrange something with my nephew who lives in Long Island so I can move in with him. If you have proof and you're showing to the judge that you're making a bona fide effort to remedy the situation, you tend to get the benefit of the doubt and get an extension of time. So that's what I would recommend to tenants right now. A lot of the housing advocates have actually, and I'm not sure if you intended to bring this up, they've shifted their attention. And one of the reasons why I think this law actually lapsed is the advocates are saying, the moratorium doesn't get to the root problem of curing the, eviction crisis and homelessness and these issues. What they are proposing is what's called good cause eviction. It's a proposal that's been sponsored by Senator Julia Salazar from Brooklyn. And what they're saying is, if you're paying your rent and you haven't been a problem tenant and you haven't caused a nuisance, well, then the landlord should have you stay, not just for the remainder of the lease, but as long as you continue to be a good tenant. And if the landlord can't present cause that you should be evicted, good cause that you should be evicted, that you're causing some sort of nuisance or something of that ilk, then they're going to be with you for the long haul. This is a very controversial proposal. You've seen some opposition, even from moderate Democrats, and certainly from Republicans, the landlord lobby. There was an extensive hearing last week, an 8-hour hearing, in fact, where a lot of these issues were fleshed out. And I actually thought the housing advocates made a compelling showing, and the landlords, there were some very persuasive representatives, but had trouble answering a handful of questions.
So when we talk about where we go from here, what is your anticipation as what we'll see in the short-term future, given the fact that the moratorium expired just now?
Well, I think what we're going to see again is not exactly the floodgates opening up, right? It's almost going to be like a low pressure shower with the evictions starting in the first couple of months here. These cases that were brought before the pandemic, these cases that have been in the housing courts for more than 2 years, you're going to start to see those evictions move forward. And then after that, later this summer, maybe you'll start to see some cases that were commenced during the pandemic. And then I think later this year, you'll start to see a lot more of these, COVID-19 defaults from the pandemic period where there was the moratorium in place. Because remember, for some of these, like let's say a holdover case, you have to serve a 90-day notice for many of the tenants before you move for the eviction. So you'll have the 90-day notice, then you'll bring the case, then the case has to be scheduled, then you appear in the case, and then the tenant's going to ask for an adjournment if they're represented by counsel. Then you'll probably get at least a couple of months if early results are any guide to what this is going to look like, you're not going to see the quick adjournments that you did in the past because of social distancing and other COVID-19 related concerns. So I really don't think, the majority of these cases are actually going to be moving out of the door until the later part of 2022 and maybe even earlier 2023.
Yeah. Well, a lot to pay attention to. Certainly, we'll be following this. Thank you, Robert, for bringing us up to speed. We'll double back with you and see what progress or what delays have occurred since this new law has gone out of effect, being the moratorium. If you want to know, the moratorium to end evictions has just ended, and we're going to see what that means for Bronxites as well as those across New York City. Robert, thanks for joining us.
All right, Darren, thanks a lot. Have me on anytime.
No problem, and we will definitely do that. And in the meantime, if you want to get connected to him, please go to his website, DAGALLP.com, and you can find out more information there. All right, we got more show. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk to you in a few.